Okay, hello to anyone out there. I'm Shannon, I'm an actor. I am from Lewisham and I now live in Shoreditch, and today I'm going to take you through how to break down a script from getting it in your inbox to actually taping it. I'm going to skip the technical side of actually doing the tape. I'm just going to break down the scene. So I'm just going to do a scene analysis. And I'm gonna do it for a script that I actually got sent 2 years ago, so hopefully no one sues me. It was for an ITV thriller called Sherwood, and I am gonna take you through from the email to the script, and hopefully you'll take something away. All of this stuff is from classes that I've learned and my own little process. I'm still figuring it out. This isn't the only way to break down a script. Obviously there are tons of ways that you can approach it. This is just, it's really kind of to help me as well consolidate my notes and record and document how my process might change. And there's stuff that I did on this tape, and I'll show you a bit of the tape, that I maybe would do differently now, or would think about more things now because I shot it 2 years ago. But yeah, I got a recall for it, and so the final rounds, but I didn't get it. And I also thought it'd be good to include a tape that I didn't get, because sometimes they're still good, just because you didn't get it doesn't mean it wasn't a good tape, and I'm proud of it. So the thing about this one and why I wanted to choose it is that we don't have much information on a previous series, because there wasn't one. This was the first one. So my first thing that I do when I get a script now, which I didn't do before, is figure out what channel it's going to be on. Try and watch an episode if it's an existing show. So if you're auditioning for Bridgerton or I don't know, something that's on already, always watch an episode. And if you can't do that, watch an episode of something that the director has already done. Now, this director actually did Dark Money and Broadchurch, but I didn't watch any episode that he directed. So I probably would, to get the style, because I guess every director has a different style. But also, I don't know, I feel like that's not a make or break. I think that it's more important if you're going into a series that exists already to actually definitely watch the series, because there is a distinct style. Broadchurch has a very distinct, or Bridgerton has a very distinct style. It's very fast paced, it's got that period style, and if you audition for it in a drama, in an ITV drama style way, in a slower pace, you wouldn't fit the show as much. So I think it's more important when you're auditioning for a pre-existing series. But as for watching something that the director has done before, I don't know how much I believe that's going to swing it. I think what is important though is knowing about whether it's ITV, BBC, Channel 4, because the channels themselves have a certain style of show that they tend to commission. ITV dramas tend to be quite close, so you're seeing people really kind of intensely, and it's quite smaller, it's not as big, whereas something like a Netflix series tends to be quite big budget, big money, big movement, and so I think adapting it to the style of channel is probably useful. But this is something that I haven't really ever done before, but in recent classes I've been told that I should be doing that. So hey, so this was an ITV thriller, so very subtle, quite contained, so all big hand gestures were not really going to work, and big expressive energy wasn't really going to work for the tone. Okay, you also want to figure out the character. Obviously, the character description should be in your email. Usually it should. Sometimes they're really long and they'll be she looks like this and she acts like this and this is her backstory, and sometimes it would be she or he, and sometimes it will be really short and to the point. So the description for this character was that it was a younger version of someone already in the show, and that she was basically a classroom teacher at the beginning of her career, and that will eventually lead her to become the headmistress of the local school. She's kind and considerate, but still very much determined to make her own decisions and take responsibility for them. There is a steely core to young Jenny that puts her in good stead for her eventual position as the head of the school. So the important parts to take away from this character description is, who she is, so the younger version of an existing character, what she does, and any adjectives that are going to be useful for playing her. So this maybe is not so much, but this kind of considerate, determined to make her own decisions, steely core, this is stuff that I'm going to remember when I'm reading the script, the scenes. Sometimes the descriptions aren't as helpful. I've had ones where it's whimsically evil, or impossibly beautiful, those I would just ignore, because you can't play that. That doesn't make sense. And also, it's actually quite distracting. I know that whenever I read something that says impossibly beautiful or unattainably attractive or the model next door, it's not going to make me feel immediately like I can play that, and B, it makes me feel insecure, to be honest, when I'm reading it. And I feel like that's an unhelpful reading things about a character's look, I think is unhelpful. And I see it a lot with female castings, and I wish that it would not be the case. I don't understand why that's relevant and how I'm going to show that on the tape. But other things like steely core is important, because I want to, when I'm reading the scenes, I want to read it with that character in mind. Otherwise, you run the risk of interpreting everything from your point of view, which it's a balance, right? I think that it's important not to just, I guess it's like what defines character. Some people argue that there is no character in this kind of acting, and film and TV acting, you bring yourself to the role. I would argue that it's somewhere in between, and that these, especially for auditions and for self-taping, you want to make sure that any adjectives like kind, considerate, confident on the outside, insecure on the inside, has a vulnerability hidden inside, these things are seen somewhere in the scene, and we'll get onto that later. But I'm gonna, for now, you just want to make sure you've noted these kind of descriptions. First thing you want to do is read everything. You can either do it out loud or in your head. I had a teacher who said that out loud is essential. I kind of flick in between doing both of those things. I'd say that out loud is quite good to kind of make sure you're picking up everything. And when I say everything, I mean everything, all the little stage directions. Just read everything in the beginning. You don't have to play all of the directions, but read everything so you're not missing anything. This is literally the first scene that I got. And as you can see, the top bit is crossed out. Sometimes I read it anyway to see if it will give me any clues to the beginning of the scene, but it didn't really, because it was kind of a jump cut. The scene before didn't follow on. It's almost like we just jump back into Kevin and Jenny, but as you can see, I don't have any context for their conversation, so that's a hard thing, first of all, but it doesn't matter, we'll just keep going. Kevin, I do, okay, Jenny, you don't have to keep saying it like you feel so guilty all the time. I know I'm not just a shag. Kevin, I know, but that's what people would think, and I will be sent back at some point, and it feels, I don't want you to think, Jenny, I don't. Kevin, I like you, okay? I like you, allotment. Jenny groans at the pun. Kevin, that is what I allot meant to say, was not to dig myself a hole or anything. Then, serious. Honestly, I just wanted to say that I've never felt like this. Never thought I could feel like this. I know. If you wanted to ever talk about me not leaving or even you leaving with me, then I'm just saying I wouldn't be against it. But I know how hard it'd be with your family, your friends, that I've been sleeping with the enemy. The bastards who beat our neighbours up make false arrests. I don't make false arrests. And what about the bastards who hurl projectiles at us, who bully and beat up the blokes who want to work? Listen, you don't get to make my decision on my behalf, okay? If I decide something, I'll worry about the consequences for me, okay? A moment, he nods, they kiss. Okay, so as you can see, when I read it then, and that's my tip for you when you read it out loud, don't add any acting choices onto it the first time. Just read it straight. Read it without any inflections, because you just want to get a sense for it, and you want to make sure you're not missing anything. You don't want to start making choices about who they are or whether or not they're having an argument, or that comes later. Now it's just about getting your first feel for it, just reading it out and seeing what stands out to you and what hits you. The second time around, you're going to go in and just pick out any things that stands out for you, any words that really kind of jump out to you. So if I was doing this, the first thing that gets me is, I know I'm not just a shag. Just because it's an interesting line, it kind of stands out as being humorous, and she feels sure of herself, and it just stood out for me in that moment. And so it's not to be too prescriptive, it's just picking out any things that jump out for you when you first read it, and then going through and highlighting them. Jenny groans at the pun is the second thing that I'd pick out, because I get from that direction that she's not the sort of person that necessarily laughs at all of his jokes, and already I'm getting a sense of their relationship. It feels like he maybe makes more than one pun many a day, and she's not really into that. So anything that gives me some kind of energy is what an acting teacher in New York said to me. Anything that makes you feel something or reveal something or stands out to you, give it a circle. And then start kind of figure out why that stands out to you and how you could maybe, put that into the playing of it. The third thing is, once you've done that, so you've read it twice now, you want to read it a third time, and this time you want to put lines across the page at what we call units, transitions, which is shifts in the scene. And this is to stop the scene from being one note, flat. If you've ever been told that something is flat, it's not nice. It's you're playing one thing all the time. So if I'm having an argument with my boyfriend in a scene and I'm just angry at him the whole way, that's a flat scene. You very rarely in an argument is someone just angry the whole way through. There's moments of anger. There's moments of someone being taken aback by what someone else might say. There might be moments of, wait, I actually don't want to argue with you anymore, but then you say something else, and then I look. So there's levels, there's layers, and we have to have that in the scene. Now for this scene, as you can see here, there are lines that I put across the page. Now what I do is I do shorter lines for what I call mini moments, which are moments that are not huge shifts in energy, but I still think there is some change there. So the first section here, I would say, is all about what he's trying to say, that he really likes me, but I already know it. So I'm like, oh my God, shut up, I get it. So that's another thing to say. After I put lines in to mark the changes, I label the sections so that each section has kind of a little note, a title to remind me of what that section's about. So for me, the first section is all about Kevin going on about him really liking me and me being like, oh my God, I get it. I know I'm important to you. So I've just put, oh my God, shut up, I get it. It's a mini beat, okay? The mini beat is him saying the joke. Because we go from, oh my God, shut up, I know you like me, to another joke. That's just a little, it's almost in the same section, but it's just it's a new bit of information. He didn't make the joke before. He made the joke halfway down the beginning of the scene, and now I'm responding to it. So I put a little shift to remind myself. And then, just to say that, it says Jenny groans at the pun. You don't physically have to go, ugh, because they said groan. You can have your own version of groan. It could be like, or you could laugh a bit, but then be like, you don't have to stick to it as long as it has the same intention of, really, you're so funny, it's fine. So that was a mini beat. And then the first big beat I've put is actually already written in the script when it says then serious. For me, that helped me identify the big shift, and sometimes there will be cues in the scene that help you identify or be written in, like a beat, a moment, which is usually a sign of a big shift. A writer is telling you there's a big change here. But for me, there's a big change because it goes from jokey, 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 I know you really like me, okay, I get it, lol, you're really funny, not, to, honestly, I just want to say that I've never felt like this. Like, that's a different energy. It's not, he's being very sincere, and that's gonna have an effect on me because I'm trying to figure out what he's confessing and why now, and I'm in a different mode to what I was before. For me, that's a big beat, and what I've put is, oh my God, what is up with you, all these feelings, as the title. So for me, from my perspective, and I put myself in her shoes, would probably be thinking, okay, wait, this dude's now getting super serious. Now, we obviously don't know where they are, but I'm gonna guess they're in bed, on the sofa. It feels intimate either way, and we can make these choices even if they're not written in the script. And for me, it's like the seriousness is perhaps coming out of not nowhere, but is obviously unexpected in the scene. At the beginning of the scene, I didn't know he was going to confess his feelings for me in this deep way, and so that is why I've marked the big shift. And it's always good to try and take nothing for granted in the scene, so don't just assume he's always confessing his feelings, otherwise that shift doesn't work, right? Otherwise it's like, oh, I get it, stop talking, and the scene would end. It has to have some level. And even in the actual filming of it, it might not be that serious, but in the tape, I'd always say go with creating as much drama as possible in the scene, creating as much change as possible, because it's important to show that you can receive new information and show different sides of yourself, rather than taking everything as a given and underplaying everything. And then the mini beat is when he says, I never thought I could feel like this. I know, but if you wanted to ever talk about me not leaving, or even leaving with me, then I'm just saying I wouldn't be against it. That's a mini beat because he's gone from talking about how he really feels to shifting into their plans in the future. You don't have to title the mini beats, you can just title the big sections, but titling in general is a good, I think, signpost to help you flow through the scene. The next big shift, which is the last shift of the scene, is after he says, what about the guys who bully and beat up the blokes who want to work? And then I say, listen, you don't get to make my decision on my behalf, okay? If I decide something, I'll worry about the consequences for me, okay? Now that's a big shift because I'm making a choice. I am deciding to basically be with him, and I'm telling him that. These shifts are again subjective. Someone else could have different beats. Some of them can be quite common in a scene where, you know, someone's having an argument and the other person slaps the second person. That's a big shift. You've been slapped. Most people are going to hit that. But for this beat is an example of one that maybe isn't so obvious, and I put it in because I felt that this was a shift from Kevin driving the conversation to me being like, I will make my own choice and I'm choosing to be with you right now and let me handle it. You want to show as many sides as possible in each scene. Now, this is something that I didn't really consider before a recent class, but obviously if you're only being sent one scene and this character is a lead or regular and is in multiple episodes, they're going to have multiple sides to them, and we might not get all of those sides in these 2 scenes that you're given, but it's important to show that you can do that. So even though I haven't necessarily got a massive chance in this scene to show a steely side to her, I can take my chance at the end when she says, listen, you don't get to make my decision on my behalf, to show the kind of strength in her, right? And to show that I have the capacity to be confident and bold. And then I can also show my softer side when I talk about, in the beginning, when I'm bantering with Kevin, and I can show that I have the capacity to be open and to be humorous and to let him in, right? I'm talking to someone who I'm presuming that I love from this information, or I definitely care a lot about. And so there's room to play with that and to show both of those sides in the scene in a subtle way, but to make sure you get it in there. What's important to note is you'll normally be sent at least more than one scene for a regular role, and that you can use those 2 scenes to show different aspects of the character. So even though I might not get the strength of her in this scene, you'll see in the second scene that we look at that you do get the strength of her. Line learning is not really part of the analysis, it's just something that you have to do. So the important thing is to not make the line learning step 1. That's not going to be helpful. Do the analysis. It's more important that you know where you're at and what you're doing than what you're saying in a roundabout way. If you get 1 or 2 words wrong, it's not as bad. It's not as bad as not knowing what you're thinking behind the lines. Now we're going to get into the questions of all that I need to know when I'm preparing a scene. Sometimes I don't know all the answers, but you just have to fill in the gaps if you don't have that much information. So what is the scene about? When I read it, I need to know what it's about. This scene is about Kevin and Jenny having a heart-to-heart about the state of their relationship. I just need to know roughly what I'm actually doing. Otherwise, it's not going to make sense. If I don't get the scene, how can I play it? Second of all, who am I talking to? I'm talking to Kevin. I don't know much about Kevin, but I'm assuming that she's in a relationship with him. You can get that from the script. Someone who I love. I think what's important is, do you like this person? Do you not like this person? Make it super easy, and then make it specific. Once you've gone from I like or dislike, try and think specifically what this relationship might be like. So yes, they're in a relationship together, but let me add in some more details. I think that perhaps Kevin has a lower status to her, considering she doesn't laugh at a lot of his jokes, and he seems to be kind of bumbling a little bit, and she doesn't necessarily seem shy in his presence, or that she puts him on a pedestal. If anything, he seems more unsure of his position. Maybe that's because he's a police officer, and I'm guessing she doesn't have a good relationship with the police officer. She's black, he is a white police officer. Obviously there's friction there, there's a history there, and so you can add these details that, you know, he always makes these puns that she's not a fan of. I mean, it's kind of endearing, but she's not a shy, retiring kind of girlfriend. She's not that. And so you can add in these details to help your performance. Second thing is, what am I doing? Here I'm not doing any big actions. It's best to keep the actions minimal in a tape. I'd say only do the essential ones. I still struggle with this. Sometimes I think that I like to throw in props. I know some casting directors and teachers don't like that, and also when you're taping for a drama, even though we're not talking about the technical side, it's good to be close, and so movements and action is not really going to work in that close frame. Comedies are a bit different where you can do things and it can be funny, but I think for dramas, go with minimal action. Another thing that I didn't think about until recently is this person that I'm playing likable or unlikable? Now, most leads, regular people, regular roles tend to be likable. Like this, she's quite a likable woman. But obviously you can have anti-heroes and the audience is not meant to like them. But what's important is that in your tape, when you watch it back, do you see yourself as someone who the audience will get on board with or not? You always want to watch that. And I know for me, sometimes I can be, especially if it's a scene where there's massive conflict, I can forget that the person I'm talking to, and this is my own thing that I need to work on, is maybe a boyfriend or my mum or something in a scene. And sometimes I can be very harsh, which comes across as unlikable and maybe unrealistic, because there's always, unless you really do not like that person in that moment, you have to show the audience that you aren't awful. And so I have to toe that line sometimes, but it's important to watch it back and think, would you back me? Would you back this person when you watch yourself back? Also, what I like to do is think about the beginning of the scene and think about the moment before and write something at the top of the scene to get me into that moment. Now you'll note that I haven't really spoken about objectives. Let me just take a drink. I'm thirsty. Robinson's drink of the gods. What I didn't talk about is objectives. Now, I have a love-hate relationship with them. I think sometimes they're not that important, and I actually think you need to know. For me, it's more about at the moment before I start speaking, what's happened, what am I doing? That moment will inform how I'm feeling. So for me, this moment, I imagine they're mid-conversation. He's trying to get something out. He's been like, Jenny, like, I really like you. And I'm like, what do you want to say? And he says, I do. Okay. That's what I imagine has happened before their conversation. It might not be like that, but to help me, this is what I've imagined. So at the top of the page, I've just said, what do you want to say? I'm like, okay, Kevin. And that's going to help me play the scene. I don't have an objective other than I'm listening. Like, I'm trying to find out what he's saying because I don't know what he's going to say. So at the end of the scene, my objective is very different to the beginning. So I find it difficult to set an objective for the entire scene. I set it up for the moment, and then that's going to change. By the end, I'm convincing him that I'll make my own choices. So I wouldn't get too caught up on finding one, like, I want to for the entire scene. I just don't think that's realistic. Unless sometimes it is, but I think a lot of the time it changes so much that for me it's about finding that beginning impulse, that beginning energy to go into, the beginning need or want or feeling that's going to help you get into the scene. So I like to write a word or a question or a phrase to help me. And then after you've done all of that work, when you're reading, when you're actually taping, throw it all away. All of that work is to be done at home when you're practicing. When you're taping, find that first buzzword that you've written, and that's it. Throw everything else away so you can listen and receive and let your impulses flow, because the worst thing is just remembering in your head the different units and not being present in that moment. It's hard when you're taping, and I'm struggling with this because you're not taping with another actor, so you kind of have to be thinking about not what's coming next, but it's not like you can give yourself up to the other person, because the other person might be your mum reading for you in your kitchen. But you can, what I would say is personalize the person you're reading with as much as possible. Make that person Kevin, this boyfriend. Find a boyfriend. If you've got a boyfriend to tape with him, or make that person you're taping with, or that wall you're taping with, your boyfriend for that 20 minutes, half an hour, and then flow with that. That's what I need to work on, and I need to do more, but that's, I think, is the key. And what I'm finding, the more real you make that thing that you're talking to a person, the easier everything else will flow. So the only thing I think about when you're actually taping is that first moment and making that person, for you, feel like they actually are the person in the scene, and everything else will follow. I hope that was somewhat useful. I was going to do 2 scenes, but as soon as I started this video, I realized that would be way too much because I had too much to get through. But I hope even just breaking down this one scene, you can see how how different techniques might be used, and maybe you've done all this already, or maybe you've done it but not in this way. If you've got any other ideas, tips, let me know. This is like a work in progress kind of thing. I'm sure I'll change and add things to it, but for now, this is kind of what's working. But nerves still get the best of you. They still get the best of me. I'm still trying to figure that out. And if I crack it, I'll let you know. But yeah, let me know if there's anything that you didn't know that was surprising in the comments below. And if you liked it, please give it a thumbs up and a like and subscribe. Because at the time of this video, fun fact, I have 0 subscribers. And I don't have a channel. I'm just doing this as my first video because I struggle with actually starting and finishing things, #creative. But yeah, leave a comment and drop a like below. Thank you.